Motivation used to look very different for me. It was more about sacrificing my sleep so I'd have more time to get things done. It looked like comparing myself to others and kind of like watching and wondering like how I could edge out competition. It looked like pushing so hard towards an outcome that I didn't even care about the process and the journey. And now that I'm in my late 40s, I'm not about self sacrifice anymore. I'm about building habits and taking actions and really focusing on that piece of it and not so much about the outcome. So when I was younger, I would sacrifice my sleep all the time. I would stay up super late, I would get up super early, just trying to pack as much as I could into a day. And I really felt like I wasn't motivated if I didn't do that. I needed to really have this like intensity and this drive, and I couldn't ever let that wane. Part of that was also driven by competition. If you know me at all, you know that I've had several different businesses throughout my life. And some of those businesses were really fueled by competition. But for me, that would almost demotivate me. I didn't realize that at the time. But if I saw that somebody was more successful than me, however you define success, I would almost feel like deflated, like, oh, I'm not doing enough. And then I would try to push harder, but then I would just burn myself out. So it really felt like I needed to be intense and just always like pushing, pushing, pushing. And I really equated pushing harder with caring more. And what I've learned is that it, you can still care without having that intensity, without comparing yourself to other people, without constantly feeling like you need to get one up on your competitors. And, that way of thinking wasn't wrong. It just wasn't sustainable for me. I mean, lack of sleep, constantly competing and comparing, it wasn't good for my mindset, and it probably wasn't great for my health either. What would happen is I would go through these cycles of like really intense activity, doing all kinds of different things to try to get myself ahead, but then I would get burnt out and then I just wouldn't do anything for a while. And so I would repeat that cycle over and over again, and it wasn't productive for me. It didn't do anything of value, and it really created this like all or nothing mentality. I was either all in or I wasn't doing anything, and then I sort of would like feel like a failure, and then I would jump in again and do like all of this activity, and there was never like it wasn't like a steady process. It was always like go go go, or it was, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of doing this. I don't want to do this anymore. And that did not serve me at all. Now that I'm older and approaching 50, I've learned that my energy really matters. And that is really tied into sleep. It's tied into being consistent, but not super intense, and just like honing that energy, using it when I can, backing off when I need to, but not having that like all or nothing mentality. It's just energy isn't something that I should be wasting at my age. And so when I have the energy, I do the things that I need to do. And if I'm not feeling well, or I'm feeling really tired, or just feeling kind of like burnt out, I just step back a little bit. It doesn't mean that I stop, I just slow down. I think one thing that I've learned is really important to me, and probably to you too if you're watching this, is that success isn't worth sacrificing yourself. It's not worth sacrificing your health. It's not worth sacrificing relationships. It's not worth sacrificing your values. Over the years, people have asked me about motivation, like how I stay so motivated, how they can get motivation. And really, if you're going to rely on motivation to get things done, it's never going to happen, because there are going to be days where you just don't feel motivated. And so if you don't feel the motivation and you're relying on it, then you're probably not going to do the things that you set out to do. For me, it's really more about building habits and routine. So, my daily workouts, I've been working out consistently for over 10 years now. I was never really a workout person before, but as I started to incorporate those daily workouts into my routine, I was finding that I felt better. I had more energy. At that point, I was trying to lose weight. So, I was seeing my clothes fitting better, and my weight was dropping. So that did help to motivate me, but it was really the habits and knowing that if I stop doing this, I'm not going to get those results. So it really has been more habit driven. Right now, what it looks like for me is creating a schedule for my workouts. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I lift weights, and I usually do like a walk for maybe 20, 25 minutes. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I run, and I have a schedule for that. I do a speed training day, I do a really easy run, and then I do a long run on the weekend. And that has served me really well for several months now. And so I'm just kind of like sticking to that. And there are days where I don't feel like it. This morning, it was very cold for Central Florida. It was only like in the high 30s. So I had to get all bundled up and put on a hat and put on gloves and a scarf. And I don't like having to do that. I don't like having to go out in the cold. It's why I moved to Florida. But I've committed to those habits. And so I went out and I did it. And I actually ended up having a really good run. And this applies also to my writing, having a schedule for that, making these videos. I have a very specific schedule that I follow, and I don't always feel like it. There are days where I'm like, oh, I have to get in front of a camera, and not that I'm like super made up or anything, but I do need to look presentable, and I do need to, be perky and have like, a good personality and all of those things. And that's not always there, but I've committed to doing this. And so I'm following that schedule. I'm doing what I said I would do. It's not about the outcomes. And if you watch my video about action goals, you know that it's the habits that are really the goals for me and not the outcome. So yes, I am making these videos and I'm posting them, but I'm not so much paying attention right now to how many followers I have or anything like that because it's still in the early stages. So I'm just following my plan, following the process, and just trusting in that. So it's really the structure and the plan that I follow and not how I feel. Anytime I didn't feel like running, didn't feel like writing, didn't feel like creating this content, probably 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't do it. And if you think about the things that you are working towards, whatever that goal is, there are probably times where you don't feel like working towards that goal. But if you have a structure in place and you follow it and you commit to that, the goal is to create those habits and stick to those actions, then that's what builds momentum and that's what makes it less likely for you to quit because you've already put in all of this work. You've already made all of this progress. Why would you want to throw that away? And I think for me at my age and, having reached so many different goals and accomplished so many things that I wanted to, I think I've learned that it's really much more about self care than self sacrifice. My sleep is very important to me. I try very hard to stick to a consistent sleep schedule. It's not always easy when my daughter has late rehearsals. We're just coming off of 2 weeks of technical rehearsals that went late. She had two different performances that also went later than I like to stay up. So I have to be flexible, but I am very committed to my sleep schedule, making sure that I'm fueling my body properly for my exercise, my runs, my fitness. And sometimes that means sacrificing not eating certain things that I might want to eat, or it might mean for long runs or for races that I'm eating more than what I'm typically comfortable with. And so it's just about like sort of finding that balance and following that, but also like taking care of myself. It also looks like not putting too much pressure on myself, following the actions and the habits and not beating myself up if the result or the outcome isn't necessarily what I wanted it to be. And also just making sure that I'm leaving space for recovery, making sure that I have time with my family to recharge and enjoy myself, making sure that I'm resting when I need to, if I'm not feeling well or something like that, being honest with myself and making sure that I'm taking that time to feel better so that I can come back stronger. One concept that has really put motivation into perspective for me is thinking about commitments that I've made to other people. So, my job, my children, my husband, my family, my friends. And when I think about how I don't always feel like showing up for work, I don't always feel like getting on a meeting. I don't always feel like cooking dinner for my family or picking up my daughter from a late rehearsal. But those are all things that I committed to and I do. So why do I stick to those commitments? But why would I not stick to the commitments I've made to myself? And so that's really how I look at things now, is not necessarily that I'm motivated, because I'm not motivated to go to work 5 days a week. I'm not motivated to do all of the things that are asked of me as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a family member. It's just sometimes you have obligations or things that you need to do and you do them. And I think it's just so empowering to think about the things that you want to accomplish, the thing, whatever goals or habits that you want to build, and look at that the same way. Would I drop the ball if someone else were counting on me? Probably not. So why would you do that to yourself? And when I look at it that way, it really does help to keep me going, because the motivation is not always there. In fact, probably like 90% of the time, it's not there. And so I need to tap into other ways of thinking, a specific mindset that really, keeps me going. And as I've gotten older, I've just found that motivation isn't really what drives me. It's more about consistency, about having a routine, about knowing what helps me to feel good, both physically and mentally, and doing those things. And it's not necessarily about like, oh, I can't wait to get up in the morning and go for a 5 mile run. No, it's very rare that I feel that way. But I also tap into the fact that I've committed to a certain schedule for my running. I have committed to upcoming races and things like that. Sometimes my husband runs with me, so I'm committed to doing that with him. And that's really where that motivation comes in. And it's just really more about, having a steady, consistent way of living. The thing is, motivation is going to come and go, and that isn't what you want to rely on if you have things that you're working towards. It's more about building steady habits and committing to those habits. Now, that's not to say that you don't like not do it once in a while. If you're not feeling well or something comes up, like, you're never going to be perfect in these routines, but being able to commit to that and to take those actions every day feels like a win in itself. And so that's something that really helps me to stay focused as well. Like if I do a run or I spend an hour writing or I create this video, I feel like I've accomplished something. And that feels much stronger than putting a ton of pressure on myself to do a whole bunch of things or to, beat out somebody else or anything like that. So it's really more about building those steady habits and feeling that sense of accomplishment from it. If any of this resonates with you, I do write more about this on my Substack as well as my other videos here on YouTube. So I hope this was helpful for you. I'd love to hear from you if you want to leave some comments down below, and I will see you next week.